I don't know about you, when I'm looking for a plumber, I like to read my reviews. HomeAdvisor.com gave me some reviews on our sponsor, Art of Plumbing. Called them. They arrived on time. Immediately found the plumbing issue and fixed it right the first time. I called them last year and it was great. I called them again this year because I had a problem again. They came out, they fixed the problem. They even gave me solutions to help stop the problem in the future at 541-9405. And I'm so excited today because I get to sit down with, I think, a man that you would never, ever expect to be in the position that he's in now. Let me help you explain this a little bit. So my guest today is named Chuck. Now, what's so great about Chuck is this. Chuck is 81 years old, and God put it on his heart to start a ministry of reaching the world through radio. And he ran into some challenges along the way, and you're going to hear that in the episode. But Chuck has found a new medium for his ministry, and that's podcasting. He's a fellow podcaster. There's something great and unique about Chuck that you're going to just have to stay tuned to find out what that is. And I hope you're ready, because you know I am. So here we go.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. I, of course, am your host, Neil, and I am so excited. It's not every day I get to talk to somebody from the great state of Georgia, but I got to introduce my next guest to you. He's been married 57 years. Let that sink in just for a moment. 4 kids, 9 grandkids. He comes from a newspaper background, done some public relations, journalism degree. He is, of course, a graduate of the University of Georgia. Go Ugga, co-produced a 60-minute Christian television show on WHNT TV. By the way, if you're struggling with your golf game, so my hand's up on this one, he can help you even get your game back into the fairway, not only in life, but in your golf game as well. Oh, did I mention he's also an author? Yeah, and he's also the host of It's a God Thing. It is a podcast up and coming. Go listen to it right now. It's a God Thing. Radio.com is where you can find that. Welcome in my guest, Chuck Cooper. Chuck, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Neil?
You know, better than I deserve. That's what I like to say. That's a Dave Ramsey thing. I stole that from him.
Yeah, that's a Dave Ramsey thing.
Totally
Yeah,
Dave Ramsey thing.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey is a friend of mine.
Is he really?
Yes, in fact, he and his former partner came to me and my partner while we were in Nashville, asking if we would help them with a television program.
Are you kidding me? Are you twisting my leg here? Are you pulling
No,
some fast ones on me?
No, I'm too far away to do that.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, but at any rate,
Yeah.
we came back to him, and after discussing it between my partner and me, and told him they had radio, they had TV voices,
Yeah.
but their faces were strictly radio. And told them that why should they mess with something that was going so well
Yeah.
anyway?
Dave Ramsey, I've never met him personally, but a small Dave Ramsey story. One of my very good friends, Gary, actually started coming to FPU. We did it at our church, and Gary ends up walking through FPU and then accepting Christ along the way through FPU. Didn't want to be there, first off. Did not want to be there. Didn't even want to be in the building. Just went one night kind of as a sympathy thing to get his wife off his back. You could probably speak to that better than I could, 57 years of marriage. But anyway, Gary ends up coming to the Lord through FPU and through the church. And to me, that is what it's all about with Dave Ramsey. And I love the guy. I try my best to do Dave Ramsey principles, try really hard. But my podcast, for the most part, is pretty debt-free, so there we are. But Chuck, I am so excited to have you on because of your wealth of knowledge, your wealth of wisdom, And before we get into some of that stuff that we're going to talk about, we got to answer the most important question everyone has to answer on my show, and that's this: is what size shoes do you wear, Chuck?
I wear 12.
Are you a 12? Okay.
I'm a 12.
You're a 12. All right. And then is there a brand, minus the golf shoes, is there a brand that you, well, maybe even plus the golf shoes, but is there a brand you like to wear?
Crocs.
Are you a Croc guy?
I am definitely a Croc guy. And that's not a Croc either.
That's not a Croc. No, I was waiting for that joke. But ching, I think we have that. Let me see. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, that was just our weak laughter there. So we're trying out our soundboard here. There we go. That's a little fun there. So Chuck, I gotta ask you this. Why do you believe in God?
Well, why shouldn't I?
Well, that's a great
I'm
question. Why shouldn't you? But why do you?
Well, I am because God has proven himself to me, Neil, over and over and over and over again through good times and through hard times. And we've been married for 57 years. Obviously, we've had some good times, and we've had a few bad times that he's helped us through. As a matter of fact, you mentioned my book, and my book is called Deciding to Believe, and it's the reasons that I decided to believe. And it's a decision. It's a decision that we individually have to make. But I listed several incidents in my life by the time I'd written that book that may force me to decide to believe that God was real and that he was in my corner.
Wow. So the book came about because of your faith and you're walking through that faith journey with him. That's what prompted the writing of the book?
Yes, partially. And I had several close friends that knew some of my background and my Christian background, and including my wife. And she said, "You know what, honey?" And I agreed with her that maybe it was time for me to write that book for my kids. And
it's
so
for your kids even. That's great.
I wrote it for my kids, and so it was a work of labor, and it's now out of print. But I'm getting ready to put it as part of my podcast.
Okay.
As soon as I can get acclimated to all the ins and
sure.
outs.
Is there any way I could get an advance copy, or do you have one laying around the house that maybe we could trade addresses and you'd send it to me? I'd love to read it.
Actually, I only have one left.
Oh, well, I don't want to take your last one then.
No, and it's written to my wife.
Okay,
So
all right. Well, if you reprint it again, maybe we could talk about that. Okay, all right.
See.
We'll see. Well, I don't know if we're there yet, but okay. So that leads into my next question, right? So you have this idea, not this idea, but you have this belief system of God, right? And you put your faith in him and you put your trust in him. And so what I'm wondering about is this idea of what makes him so real to you. Because a lot of people say they believe in God, right? But do they really believe in him, and is he real in their life?
Well, I believe that saying that you believe in God means that you've submitted your life to him. Because if you haven't submitted your life to him, you really don't believe in it. And so I was saved, Neil, when I was 14 years old at a Methodist youth camp up on the shores of Lake Erie. And but I went to after I got saved, I went the very next week. I went to football practice. We were starting our football season, high school football season, and I couldn't wait to get there to tell my friends about this new friend I had named Jesus. And from that day on until I graduated, and even afterwards, they called me Preacher Chuck.
Preacher Chuck. Okay.
Preacher Chuck. Yeah, I didn't deserve that, but that's what they did anyway.
Right.
And so, Neil, it's my spiritual journey has been, I guess, sort of a typical one because as I matured a little bit and got out from under the influence of my parents, I finally got to the point where I was on my own, and I had to struggle living for Christ like I should have. I fell away, and I still went to church. I still, believed in God, but I was enjoying some of the privileges what I called privileges, that I had after I accepted Christ and went out on my own. And I think that's sort of typical of folks. But eventually, things began to happen to me that I realized were not coincidences. It was God directing me and trying to direct me. And so for many, many, many years, I kept praying to God, God, what is it you want me to do for you? I know I'm supposed to serve you, but how should I serve you? And so at first I thought, well, okay, maybe it's just being a good Christian husband or a good Christian businessman. I did some writing for some Christian magazines, but that just didn't seem to. It didn't seem to feel right, that there was something more that he wanted from me. And many, many years later, after we retired, we were traveling in our motorhome, and I was still praying almost every day, Lord, what do you want from me? Tell me, I'm getting older. What do you want?
Not getting any younger here, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right.
So during one night, Neil, I woke up in the middle of the night and knew exactly what he didn't say this out loud, but I knew what I was supposed to do. So I woke Sue up. And I said, honey, I got it. I know what God wants us to do for him. And she said, what's that? I said, he wants us to do a radio program for him. Her words, I quote, you are absolutely nuts. Go back to sleep.
That's a sign of a good bride, by the way.
Absolutely. Well, I woke her up in the middle of the night.
Well, you're lucky you didn't get socked in the face, maybe, by waking her up. But no.
No, she's a strong believer.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, so you have this kind of epiphany moment, right? You have this kind of God ordained moment, right, where you're like, hey, we're supposed to do something bigger than this. And that's where the radio stuff comes in, right? So you have this epiphany moment, and then what happens?
Well, everybody. I mean, the Lord kept putting people in my path.
Okay.
Because I asked him to, and they were very, very helpful, and even in giving a name. We were attending a small church down on the Panhandle of Florida. We were camping down there in our motorhome, and so I went to their pastor and our temporary pastor, and told him what the Lord had said, and he said, Chuck, you don't have any choice. You got to do this.
Right.
And so they helped too, and so I called a friend at our former church in Daytona Beach. And because I knew that she was in the know, and I knew that there was a Christian radio station nearby, and so I called her to see if she knew the people and could give me some guidance, and so she did, and so I wrote a letter to the owners of the radio station.
Not an email, but a letter.
A letter, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to do that, lick a stamp and put it in an envelope. Okay. I need to explain that to you.
I appreciate that. I was wondering what you were talking about. Like, I'm thinking, oh, he sent an email. No, you physically sent a letter. Okay, go on.
Yes,
Sorry
I did.
about that. Yeah.
Yes, I did, young man. And I had 22 questions in there that I asked,
wow.
And I got a phone call 2 days after I bailed it, and this owner said, I really like your idea.
Yeah.
And so, you're in Florida now? And I said, yes, ma'am, that's right. And she said, well, I'm going to do a fundraiser at our radio station in Pensacola. How far are you from Pensacola? And I said, about 40 minutes. And she said, good, I'll be over there next week. I want you and Sue to come over. I want to chat with you and see if I can help you. Yeah. So we did. And so Carol Henry, bless her heart, she let us broadcast our very first radio program on her station for free. Never charged me a bit for it.
What year was that, Chuck?
Let's see, that was in 2009, so that's
Okay,
10 years
so about
ago.
10 years
10
ago.
years.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be at the end of this month. I'll be 81. So that was I was 71 when all this happened.
That's insane to me that at 71 years old, you're like, you know what? I'm going to listen to, some may even be skeptical of this. Like, I'm going to listen to what you believe. And I think, echo in your heart and saying, believing that God is leading you to do this. To me, that is so profound in a lot of ways, because I think so many times when we're nudged or hit over the head or pushed or whatever it may be to go out and do something, I think there's that tendency to say, well, wait a minute, hold on, how's that going to work? What's that going to look like? I need the whole, blueprint of it. And he's saying, no, take a step. Take a step. So, Chuck, I'm curious, because it sounds like everything has just been rosy for you. Everything's just been wonderful and just glamorous and gorgeous. There's never been failure along the way, right? There's never been a moment where Chuck failed, right?
Yeah.
There's never been that moment.
Hey, what planet are you on?
So there has been a moment then.
Oh, there've been lots of moments.
Okay.
Lots of moments.
So,
Lots of moments of
so,
doubt.
so what is the greatest failure that you've encountered in your life?
Not following his instructions exactly as he's presented them to me. Trying to take off and do something on my own that he didn't ordain.
Do you have an example of that?
I have several.
Okay.
I have several. Once, but the first thing I want to explain to you, Neil, is that from the get-go, Sue and I both said to each other, this ministry that God has given us is about God. It's not about Chuck and Sue. It's about God. We're doing what he told us to do, and we're going to continue to do what he tells us to do until we die or until he tells us not to do it anymore. So, but that said, there were many occasions, and an example is that we started funding and purchasing airtime with our retirement funds. But boy, they didn't last very long. Airtime was very, very costly. And particularly if you wanted to reach markets that had, highly populated markets, so you had more reach. So we tried that first, and that didn't work. So we went with a bunch of small stations. And what we found out was that the small stations were great in their local communities, but small stations were really, really, really having a tough time financially. And they had to keep increasing their airtime fees. And again, we couldn't match that. So we stopped for almost a year. Didn't produce any more programs at all, and asking, okay, Lord, now you started this, so what do we do now? What do you want me to do now? And so eventually, as I think maybe I told you, after we retired, we traveled in our motorhome about 13 to 14 years, traveling all over the country.
Right.
And seeing the provision that God's provided for us. What a special place this is for us. And so we were really concerned about whether we're going to continue or how we want to do this, and very discouraged. And because it didn't seem like anything was happening at all. And then we had the fortune of settling in Blairsville, Georgia, which is about 98 miles north of our kids in Atlanta, some of our kids in Atlanta. We didn't want to be in the Atlanta area, but so we settled here, bought a house. And man, oh man, the second Sunday we were here, went to a local church here. And after the service that evening, we went out to, we'd been invited to go out to Wendy's to have a bite to eat. We happened to sit down next to the associate pastor of that church, who was about ready to retire. And so he was asking me my background, and I told him about our It's a God Thing radio program, and
Yeah.
he said, Chuck, do you know Larry Flegel? He plays in the orchestra, plays a tuba in the orchestra. And I said, no, sir, no. He owns a Christian radio station here in town. You need to meet him. I said,
Yeah.
okay, I'll give him a call. But the very next Sunday, we were asked to be greeters at one of the side doors, the entrance where the choir and the orchestra and others come in. Lo and behold, here came Larry. And I said, Larry, I'm Chuck Cooper, and you run a radio station here, WCG, right? And he said, yes, sir, I do. And I said, do you use local programming? And he said, what you got? And I said, well, I don't have time. I'm trying to greet everybody. There are people lined up behind you. So he handed me his card. He said, call me. I did. Sue and I spent 2 hours with him. And he said, Chuck, listen, you are an answer to my prayers because I
What?
needed some.
Are you kidding
Yeah.
me?
Oh, no, I'm not kidding you. And I said, why, Larry? Why? And
Yeah.
he said, because I'm a one-man gang here. You've got a little bit of background in radio.
Right.
So here's what I want to do. I would like for you to volunteer to help me spread the good news about our radio program. But in exchange for that, if you do that, then I'll give you airtime twice a week for your program.
That never
So-
happens, by the way.
I
Those
know
those events, that type of thing does not happen. I don't think people
You're-
realize that.
You're telling me. So we did that, but our reach was very small, very, very small. And it couldn't even be reached throughout the county. So all these years, the years out of it, the last 7 years, I've been saying, okay, Lord, we need to spread the reach. We need to spread the reach.
Right.
And Neil, I don't want to bore you with details, but a month ago, almost to the day, a month ago, we were visiting my former business partner in Nashville and my son who lives in that area. We were visiting with them on our way up to see our other son in St. Louis. They asked me, both of them asked me if on our way back, if they had a regular Wednesday noon luncheon with several of the movers and shakers, Baptist movers and shakers in
Right.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I said, well, yeah, I can stop by and go with you, sure, on the way home, back down to Blairsville. And so, but on Sunday afternoon, I got a call from the leader of that group that I knew, and he said, listen, I'm in charge of the program, would you be willing to share your ministry with our people?
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, of course I would. Thank
Sure.
you,
Who
Lord.
wouldn't want to be in an audience
Yeah,
like that, right? To talk
So I
about your
shared a
show?
little-
Yeah.
I shared a little bit, and then I said, these are my exact words. I said, guys, that's my story, but I want you to know I am not here to pick your pocketbook.
Right.
I'm here to pick your brains. I need to know how to expand our reach. One of them, who had a broadcast background, an executive, spoke up right away.
Sorry, there's a siren going by us right now. Apologize
Yeah,
for that.
Yeah, I always pray for sirens.
There you go.
But at any rate, Neil, right away, this broadcast executive said, Chuck, you need to get off that radio deal.
Yeah.
Radio is dying.
Yes, it is.
And especially with your program, your listener, in order to hear listen to your program, they have to set aside a specific hour at a specific day each week to listen to you.
Right.
And that's asking too much of them, especially for younger folks.
Right.
So you need to do a podcast.
And you're like, what is that?
Yeah, I said, I've heard that term. I know what a pod is, but those are whales. So my exact words. So they said, we're going to help you.
Yeah. So they squared you away.
Oh, did they ever? They
Yeah.
provided a way. But the great thing was, Neil, before we left, Sue and I, to come back home, before that luncheon was over, they stood up and laid hands on me
Oh my gosh.
and prayed for guidance from God on what I should do with that ministry. Amazing.
That to me is worth the price of admission right there.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
that-
so
that-
awesome.
I'm a little bit emotional in telling that story,
Mm.
but it is amazing to me how when we're obedient to God, He will guide us and
Yeah.
He will direct us.
Yeah.
And we launched last Wednesday. Was our first episode.
How's that feel?
It was a ton of work. I mean, a ton
Boy,
of
do I
work.
know that. Oh my
Oh
gosh. The
man, oh
stories
man,
I could tell even. Yeah.
I was asking strangers like you at the time for
Strangers.
some
We're
help.
family now, yeah. But
That's exactly, yeah. Now,
but
don't get that family thing. I'll adopt you as my grandson.
yeah, there
but-
you go. I told you could be Grandpa Chuck. I wanted to introduce
Okay.
you as Grandpa Chuck. So
But
Chuck.
we need to get one thing clear. The other kids have got dibs on the wheel. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
All right,
That's
good.
fine.
All right.
I could be an eternal. How about that? An eternal grandchild. So it's funny.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw Garrett under the bus here because one, he can't say anything because he's just listening. But so Garrett comes to me and he says, "Hey, who's doing your show notes?" Garrett and I have known each other for a long time now, probably 3 years ish, thereabout. And he said, "Who's doing your show notes?" And I was like, "Well, I am." And he goes, "I noticed you're copying and pasting your notes. Reveal, the big reveal here." And I go, "Yeah, I am. It just makes it easy. We're kind of in this series, second season. We did, why people leave the church. And I literally just copy and pasted every week. It was the same stuff. I mean, I didn't talk about the guest. It was the same principle. So I was like, we'll just make it easy." Well,
Yeah.
then Garrett says to me, he goes, your show notes, if I'm quoting him correctly, says they suck. They're terrible. He's giving me the thumbs up. And he says, I've really been thinking about this and even praying about it. And he goes, I want to come do your show notes. And I was like, that's great. Thank you. Because this whole time, I've been praying, God, I hate doing show notes. Every week I go to sit down to do show notes before I release an episode. And I'm like, this is the one thing I hate doing. Doing interviews all day long. Hands down, I would do it 24/7, right? That's the part I love. I had an editor for a long time for our second season. I'm like, I don't even have to do that. I literally just book shows, record episodes, give it to an editor, and I'm like, this is just golden. And now Garrett's going to do show notes. This is going to be fantastic. And then all of a sudden, I'm on the line on the internet one day, and I see this Rodecaster Pro, and I'm like, oh, I need that. God, I need that. And so we through a series of events, we're editing the show now. I'm editing the show now. Garrett's doing show notes, but without Garrett coming along, I don't think the show could have gone forward the way it has. And I am so grateful to have a team, and it sounds like you are as well, to have that team around you that can support you. And so that leads into my next question, is this idea of, after all these years, what continues to inspire you to keep taking that step forward and to keep going forward, even though sometimes things have been hard? I mean, let's face it. I mean, not to sound mean, but you're not young. You're not up and inundated with all the technology that's out there. I'm pretty fortunate. I've grown up in this, technology blown up generation of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And, you haven't grown up around that. So how has that not stopped you, but how have you continued to be inspired to keep going forward?
Well, God has inspired me. In fact, I don't know about inspiring, but He's told me what He wants me to do. And I've got to be obedient to Him. And so I'm trying my best to be obedient to Him. Now, I have a team. It's called me. and so
Yeah.
I do all the interviews.
There you
I
go.
do all the
Yeah.
promoting. I do all the editing. And it's a labor of love, and it takes time, as you know.
Yes, it does.
But I have to tell you something about my sweet Sue. Just 2 days ago, on Saturday, she came to me, and I was working in my little office there, and she came to me, and she said, "Honey, I need to ask you to forgive me." And I said, "Forgive you for what? What? We're not having supper or what?" And she said, "No, I haven't been as strong a supporter of this ministry that God has given to you and to me as I should have been. I've just listened to your first 2 segments that you've done. They are amazing.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. So I want to tell you that I'm so sorry. you have my full support. I know it's taking long hours, and I know that you keep telling me I need a Sweet Sue hour, and that's true. And she said I like that too. But I want you to know this ministry, I'm all in on this ministry and what you're doing. You do whatever it takes to get it done. Now there are not many wives that would tell you that.
Well, you found a good one, and that was the thing. So my podcast story is very similar. My wife, through a series of events, I wasn't no longer leading in any capacity at church. A lot of that was my choice. And my wife says to me, she says, "Babe, you need a verbal outlet," and I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but she's like, "You need something where you're communicating when we're talking." And I was like, "I talk 8 hours a day. You do realize that I do talk on the phone 8 hours a day. I'm getting my talking in. Don't worry." She's like, No. All those ideas in your head need to come out, and you need an avenue to do that." And I was like, "Yeah,
Boy,
okay."
she's a special woman.
She is, yeah. We just celebrated our 18 years this month in the month of August. So,
Oh man, you're still learning.
yeah, we're not even close to we're not even close to the Chuck sphere.
Yeah.
But with that, last fall, and coming up on a year now, I sat down and I started figuring out what it would take to start a podcast, what equipment I would need, what things I would need, what microphones, all of that. And I just kind of dove in to the deep end and, realistically figured it out because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. I listened to that first episode I put out, which is Success. I'm a self-plug. Go back and listen to the first season 1, episode 1, and now listen forward. I think you're going to hear a difference. I hope you're going to hear a difference because, I think I've gotten better. I think the show's gotten better. I think our content's gotten better. I think the people we have found, not that they've gotten better, but we found, I think, quality people. And now with Garrett on board, also in the search mode of, also in the mindset of who can we get that's going to make a difference, that's going to bring quality stuff. And I think that again leads into this idea of, Chuck, what is the greatest advice you've ever gotten in your life?
Oh man, I tell you, I've had so many people have been influential in my life, starting with my mother and my father, my grandparents on both sides. I have a Christian heritage, and so I am so grateful for that. I mean, that's a blessing, a real blessing, because I got a lot of guidance. The coaches that I had, now they were Christians, and they guided and directed me, always encouraged me. I think probably one of the best bits of advice that my dad gave to me was, he said, "Son, I want you to understand that if you decide to do something, you go all in on that. Now, I'm going to encourage you. You want to be This was when I was young, probably 7 or 8 years old. He said, I know you're wanting to start to play sports and that sort of thing. Be the very best you can." And so, Neil, I did that. But you know what? After I got saved, I was an athlete, and I decided that early on, I decided that I wanted to be the best athlete in my school because I wanted to prove that just because I went to church and I didn't swear didn't mean I was a sissy. So if you wanted to have a disagreement with me, let's put on the pads, we'll go out on a football field, and we'll find out who's the man. And that was really sort of my life's goal at that time. And the Lord provided me with good skills, and I worked hard, but I did. I was named the most valuable athlete in my high school, earned 16 varsity letters, and which is still a record at that high school. And all that's to say is that Dad told me to be the very best I could, but I didn't agree with him. I said, "No, Dad, I want to be the best athlete so that I can speak for God, and people would respect me not only for my my faith, but also for my athletic ability. So
So speaking
guess
of
that
that,
was-
I mean, you got a guy right in your neck of the woods. You probably heard of this guy. He's pretty famous in the University of Florida ranks. You know who I'm talking about?
yeah, Tim.
Yeah, you just know him as Tim. That's awesome. But that reminds me of Tim Tebow, what you're describing to me, because I think Tim, and I'll be honest with you, I met him
Hey, Neil, let me stop you. Please don't compare me with Tim.
I'm not. By no means am I not. But I am going to say this. There is some similarities. And the similarities is that he used his faith, his athletic ability to put his faith on display and on a platform. And I believe God built a platform for him through athletics to put his faith on display. And I
no
think
doubt.
and I think that's what you're describing to me is that idea that, you know, through your high school experience, you know, God obviously blessed you to be an athlete. I mean, obviously 16 letters. I mean, Garrett and I are both like, wow, that's pretty impressive. But from the standpoint of that he allowed you know, through circumstances, through athletics, to really give you a platform to speak to speak about him to people. And I think, to me, that's what it's all about. And so that's when I was hearing that, I was like, man, that sounds like, to me, it sounded like Tim Tebow. So, but
there's a downside to that too, Neil.
What's the downside?
The downside was when I graduated from high school, and I got several offers to play both football and basketball at the collegiate level. But I had to develop a different Chuck, because in high school, I was known for my athletic skills. I was good with a ball. But once I was out on my own, and in college, and particularly after I left college and went into the Air Force, I didn't have that ball. My identity had always been, for years, had been because of how I could handle a ball of some kind. So I had to develop a different personality, and that was tough. That was tough. So fortunately, I was way away from home. Nobody knew me there. So then I could base my identity on being a Christian, and that has been and was a real blessing.
So Chuck, you talk about that. You talk about your identity being wrapped up into maybe that was a struggle in high school. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I didn't know you in high school. I wasn't even born yet. No disrespect there. Just trying to be a little funny. But
they did have high schools back then.
But my question is what did that kind of rebuilding process of you? How did that go down, or how did that experience happen for you? Of kind of rebuilding your identity in a lot of respects away from athletics and away from that identity. How did that happen for you?
Well, I just realized that there are a lot more important things for me to be involved in than just playing ball. And I still played. I still played a lot. I wound up being a golf pro, for heaven's sakes. That involves the ball too. It's a smaller one than I was used to, but that's okay. And so I had to realize that I was something better than just an athlete. And yes, I enjoyed the athletics, but I determined then that if I was going to be successful in life, I had to finally give in to the Lord and say, okay, Lord, I submit my life to you, and I'm yours, so you guide and direct me. And then he made me wait 40 years or whatever it was before it was longer than that, before he finally told me what it was he wanted me to do. But I can look back then and now, and Sue even says so and agrees with me. But I can look back, Neil, and see how God has guided me all my life and prepared me to do the very thing that he finally eventually told me what to do.
So with that, how has perseverance played into your story?
Oh, perseverance are me. In several ways. Fortunately, I have never been persecuted or ridiculed for my faith for some reason. I haven't.
How is that even possible? I am curious on that one. I got to jump in on that one. How is that even possible? Are you kidding?
No, I'm not. The first time, believe it or not, the first time I was ever persecuted or chastised for being a Christian was last week. In a conversation that I was having with somebody that asked me if I would accept them as a friend on Facebook. And I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. So
Surprised you
she
know what
made it.
Facebook is, but I didn't want to go there. Just kidding. I'm kidding. That was a bad joke. Sorry. But you were
That's okay.
persecuted last week on Facebook because
Yeah.
somebody didn't want to. You didn't want to accept their friend request.
No, I did accept.
Oh,
their
you
friend
did.
request.
Okay.
And
So,
then they posted something that I disagreed with,
mm,
and so I made a comment, and she responded and said, "Well, opinions vary." And I wrote it back and I said, "Yes, but truth doesn't vary."
ooh,
And then she said something to, I can't remember exactly now how it went, but she said something else that something about Christians who don't know the truth and that they don't worry about how the earth is going to end. They've got this fairy tale thing, and so I just shared my testimony with her, and she came at me, and so I didn't use all kinds of vulgar language and everything. So I did not respond to her. I prayed about it. I wanted to. Oh man, did I want to? I wanted I wanted to give it to her, but
welcome to the
about
new
it.
age of
Yeah,
hiding
right.
behind Facebook. By the way, welcome
Yeah,
to
and
that.
so I prayed about it, and the Lord very, very clearly said, just keep your mouth shut and move on.
Yeah.
So I did. I unfriended her, and
Mm.
so I went on. But and I don't know how what got off on that
No,
topic.
it was me. That was my fault.
Yeah,
So,
no,
so,
that's
so
no, that's right.
perseverance, though. I mean, that's obviously a key cornerstone to your life, wouldn't you say? Would you say?
Yes, Neil, I think it's because of my upbringing. Number one, do your very best, and also the Bible says that if He tells you to do something, He's going to provide the wherewithal to get it done. And so I've had to lean on that a little bit. But then, in the meantime, when I got to stop doing what He's told me to do because I ran out of money, and I certainly wasn't going to ask for money. That was sort of tough, and so then I started asking, okay, Lord, well, I've done all this stuff. What do you want me to do with it? Do you want me to write a book? I don't know. What do you want me to do with it? And so eventually He told me in a very unusual way, but eventually He told me that, But I think perseverance is just part of our DNA.
Is it part of your DNA for sure?
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Okay.
I don't doubt that.
Because not everyone
Yeah.
has it. You know what I mean? Not everyone has perseverance. Not everyone. I mean, I got to be honest with you. If I'm going to be really transparent here, in my early 20s, if a job was hard, if a I was pretty fortunate. I married my wife young, but specifically professionally, if a job was hard, if a boss, coworker I didn't like, man, I was out of there. I didn't care. I'm embarrassed to say this. I had probably 6 jobs in 1 year because it was hard, because things were tough, and because I would quit. And I was like, oh, I don't like that person. I'm going to go somewhere else where I can be, new and free and, whatever. But it was tough. And it really has come around lately that I've really, as bad as it sounds, I've embraced, it's hard to say, I've embraced perseverance. I've embraced the fact that stuff is going to be hard, that it's going to take time, that it is going to take, and really this show has been a great lesson for me on that, is that it's not going to happen overnight. People hearing about other people's shoes isn't going to happen overnight. It's just not. And having to be
Right.
okay with that, and having to kind of struggle through that and not quit and not give up when it's been really hard to find people, or it's been really, challenging to get content out. I mean, it's been tough, as you know. I mean, I'm talking to somebody that knows all about that.
Yeah, but Neil, I tell you what, I admire you for admitting what you just did about not persevering as you should. I guess maybe one of the reasons that I was able to do that is that that I grew up and we had a comfortable home, but we weren't wealthy by any means. Um, I had to get my chores done, and if I didn't get my chores done, I didn't get the car on Friday night.
I don't think
You know,
kids would even know what that is in this day and age.
yeah, no, they all have their cars
Yeah,
already.
exactly, right?
My dad's car. But so Neil, I developed a very, very strong work ethic. As a matter of fact, my first job was I was 9 years old, and I wanted to earn some extra money other than my allowance. I got 25-cent a week allowance in those
What
days.
year's that? Help me out year
Uh,
wise.
let's see, I was 9 years old, so it was 47 right after the war was over.
Okay.
And
That puts it in
so,
perspective for me, by the way. That's the only reason why I'm asking. Is it helps
well,
me put it in
well,
perspective.
hey, Neil, that was World War II, not World War One.
I got that. I do know my history a little bit, but
Okay.
but yeah, I appreciate the clarification. Man, zing zing. Oh man. But so what were you doing? 9 years old, what are you doing? What
Oh,
job do you have?
I was weeding flower beds at a local nursery,
Okay.
and yeah, I got 50 cents an hour. Man, I was in high cotton. But I also,
High
but I
cotton.
also,
That's a
yeah.
phrase you don't hear every day either. High cotton. Okay. Sorry.
You gotta be from the South before you understand it.
Yeah, I
Much
guess
of
so.
it. So, and I say that because I was born to Southern parents, but I grew up in the North.
Okay.
And, but was blessed by being able to move back south after
Yeah,
I got
I
out
bet.
of here. Yeah. So, at any rate, but I think the work ethic that I got. I also had a paper route. I caddied at a Jewish country club when I was old enough to do that. I always had a job, always in the summertime, always had a job because if I wanted something, I had to earn the money for it. It wasn't given to me. Parents provided my food, they provided clothing. But if I had a date and going to borrow the car, I had to put gas in the car. But that was the upbringing. I mean, that was the upbringing of most of my friends, for crying out loud. I mean, I wasn't anything unusual. That was the norm in those days. And I think most of us in my generation, we learned how to work. We learned that if we were ever going to amount to anything, we needed to work. And you know what? If the boss tried to get you to do something you didn't want to do, as long as it was immoral, you did it.
Yeah, you didn't question that, did you?
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
But in those days, you were honored by bosses because you were willing to work
Right.
and because you were obedient and did what they said. Boy, if that isn't a comparison to what Christ has told us to do, I don't know what is. But
Yeah.
I didn't intend for it to be that way.
Well, Chuck, I want to kind of wrap up our time here,
Sure.
and I want to just kind of maybe camp on this question. Then that's this whole thing of, if you weren't, if it wasn't at all possible that you weren't doing, it's a God thing, what do you think you'd be doing?
I've never asked myself that question. I haven't even thought about that question. I mean, I'm so engaged in what the Lord has told me to do, and He's blessing me now. He has always blessed me, but sometimes I didn't realize it. But I'm not sure. Maybe go to the golf course more often.
What's your handicap, by the way?
Well, I was at 2, but
Okay.
that's a long time ago.
All right.
And I really I've had some shoulder issues and had the hip replaced, and I haven't been able to play for about 3 years. But I'm about ready to go to the driving range and check it out again.
There you go. So last question, then we're going to play a game with you. So how has It's a God thing changed your life? I mean, we talked about what you wouldn't be doing. You know, you're not sure what you would be doing if you weren't doing it. But how is this platform, this medium, if you will, how has this changed your life and your bride's life?
I don't think it has changed our life. It hasn't changed our beliefs. It hasn't changed our relationship with God, with Jesus. It hadn't changed our relationship with friends, other than we've gathered some new ones like you through it. So I can't honestly say that our life or our lifestyle has been changed by this. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's a labor of love because I know this is what God wants me to do, and I got to do it.
I think that's great, and I think when you're doing what God has obviously ordained for you to do and giving you the avenue to do it, it doesn't become so much as a struggle. I mean, I know there are struggles, but not hard struggles, but joyful struggles, peaceful struggles, if there is such a thing, right?
Yes, I guess I could describe it in one word: calling.
Mm,
I've been called by God to do this for Him.
that's
I
awesome.
don't have,
That's so
I
great.
have a I have a choice, but that choice is not acceptable to me.
Right. It's kind of like when the phone rings. It's our choice whether to answer it or not answer it, right?
Well, I did answer yours.
You did. That's true. Not a lot of people answer my calls some days, but that's another
Well, I
story
made,
for another
but see,
time.
I made a promise, so I had to keep the promise.
You did make a promise, and you did keep it. So, so Chuck, tell us real quick. I know you're just kind of getting things rolling, but It's a God Thing radio.com is where people can hear past episodes that aren't necessarily on iTunes yet, right?
Right.
And
We're
the-
applied, but
Right. And then how often is the show going to come out on iTunes and other platforms?
every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
Yeah,
Huh.
every Wednesday.
I know another good show that comes out on Wednesdays. Just
Yeah, I do too.
All right, just checking.
That was a copycat.
You're a copycat. Nice. I like that. Well, imitation is
No,
the
but
best form of
I asked-
flattery or whatever.
Yeah, I asked. Yeah, it was flattery, intentional, but I just then I forgot where I was going.
Oh, just coming out on Wednesdays? You
Yeah.
asked around?
Yeah, I did ask around. I asked, "What is the best day? What is the best?"
And
day?
everyone said Wednesday?
Most of them said Wednesday night. I didn't want to do Wednesday night. before
Wednesday
church
night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but that's the middle of the week.
I don't know how I
Yeah.
settled on Wednesday. I think that was it for me. Is it was just middle of the week. It seemed like a good
Yeah.
breakup to things.
Well, and most of them have gotten all the activities over till hump day. Now it's hump day,
Yeah.
and they got the rest of the week to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. So go listen, guys. He will be out soon on iTunes. I think by the time we air this, you'll probably be rocking and rolling on iTunes because we'll be airing this coming up then. So go listen. Definitely go check out their website. It's a godthingradio.com. And so Chuck, since you're not here in Oregon, way out here in Oregon, see if I can do this. I always do this to myself. I always lock my phone and then try to open it while I'm doing this, and it always is so talented. I think I'm talented. Okay, so Garrett's going to roll for you because you can't roll. We play a game that we like to call Senseless, and so we like to end the show with this game. So here we go. Garrett's going to roll for you. You can hear the die rolling in the background. And you got a number 1, Chuck. So this is your question, Chuck. You ready?
Yep.
All right. How do others see you? So again, senseless. We take the 5 senses and we turn it into a game. Number 6 is a wild card. But how do you want people to see you? Last question.
Other than my radio program, what God has told me to do is to use my humor and my belief in Him to make other people laugh. Once they're laughing, their mind is off the problems that they have. So everybody I see walking down the street in the grocery store, I'll say hi to them. If I have an opportunity, I'll say something that'll make them laugh.
That's funny to me. That's so charming in a lot of respects, right? Is kill them with your kindness, kill them with your humor. I love that. Chuck, anything you want to end with, and then I'll let you get the last word in here. Anything you want to say as we kind of wrap up?
Well, no, but I can't tell you, this has been a blessing for me. You've asked some very, very interesting questions that I had to think about. But you're a good interviewer, and that's coming from a guy that thinks he's also a good interviewer. So, and I just I prayed for you this week, and prayed for your podcast, and because you have a ministry in its own, like I do, And so I just want to encourage you to continue full steam ahead with the permission of your wife, and go forward and continue to serve God the way that you have done and are doing. So bless you.
Yeah, and Chuck, likewise, right back at you. This was an honor. I'm so glad we got to cross paths. I say it all the time, and it just is so bears repeating. Podcast to me has opened up the doors to talk to people from all walks of life. And my wife, for our anniversary, got me a necklace that has a microphone on it, because it's to remind me that when I'm looking at that necklace, I really need to remember this phrase. And that's this phrase that her and I kind of came up with together. And that's this idea of this, that when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. And we're going to end with that. Just this idea. I want to thank my guest, Chuck. Chuck, thanks so much for coming on. I do definitely strongly encourage you to go listen to his podcast as well. Go check out his website. So please go and do that. And again, just remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I'm so grateful to do this every time we get a chance to do it. And keep listening and stay tuned for future episodes of Other People's Shoes. Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. I, of course, am your host, Neil Matthews. I don't know about you, but today's episode, man, I think I've laughed so hard during that episode. So many things Chuck said was just profound. Great guy. Great mentor to be, I believe, on both sides. I think very much reciprocated, right? I can help him. He can help me with some wisdom. I can help him with some podcasting. I mean, all the way around, everybody wins. Hey, if you love this episode as much as I love doing it, please feel free to share it with any of your friends, family members, or coworkers. If you think they would enjoy Chuck just as much as we did, which I know they will, who couldn't use another grandfather in their life? My hand's up. I definitely could use another one. If you'd like to listen to past or present episodes of this show, you can do so at opspodcast.com. There you can find past and present episodes, as I mentioned. We, of course, are on all the social medias. Facebook, go there right now and like us. We are under Other People's Shoes. If you'd like to follow us of our comings and goings, you can do so on Instagram. We are under OPS Podcast Show. You can do so there. Follow us there. If you'd like to tweet us, that can be done at People's Shoes. We, of course, are on Twitter, as I just mentioned. By the way, stay tuned for next week. We have a great show in plan for you. Make some plans to join us Wednesday as we get into another pair of shoes. I am so excited to meet this next guest next Wednesday. Are you just as excited as I am? I hope so. Join us then. Can't wait to hear you. Can't wait to see you. I, of course, am Neil Matthews. This, of course, is Other People's Shoes. Join us next week as we get into another pair of shoes.